Close your eyes now if you like. You don't need to remember anything from this story. You don't need to follow it closely. You can simply let the words drift over you, like a soft tide moving in and out over quiet sand. Tonight, we are going back, far back, before there were calendars, before there were kingdoms, before there was even a single grain of sand to count. We are going back to the very beginning of everything. This is an old, old story. People have been telling it for thousands of years, in stone halls and candlelit rooms, in villages where the fire crackled low and the night pressed gently against the windows. In the Middle Ages, actors would perform this story slowly, one quiet scene at a time, for audiences who sat wrapped in wool cloaks under open evening skies. Tonight, there is no stage. There is only my voice, and the dark, and you, safe and warm, sinking a little deeper into your pillow with every sentence. So let's begin. Slowly. There is no need to rush a story this old. Before there was anything, there was nothing. Not even darkness, really, because darkness needs a space to exist in. And there was no space yet. There was no up. There was no down. There was no time passing, because there was nothing to measure it by. No clocks, no sunrises, no breath, no wind, no whisper. Just stillness. A stillness so complete that if you could have stood there, although there was no there to stand in, you would have heard nothing at all. Not silence even, because silence is the absence of sound in a place. This was the absence of place itself. And into that vast, still, formless nothing, something began to stir. Not a sound, not a light, just the faintest whisper of intention. The way you feel late at night, the first drowsy thought of a dream beginning to form before you're even fully asleep. Soft, shapeless, but somehow there. The old story tells us this was the beginning of the world. Slowly, so slowly, shape began to settle over the nothing. A vast, dark deep, without edges, without floor. The storytellers of long ago called it the deep waters, though they weren't water as we know it. Not yet. Just a formless, endless dark, folding gently over and over itself, like a heavy blanket being smoothed out by unseen hands. And somewhere within that folding dark, a breath moved. Just a breath. Slow, patient, unhurried. Take a breath yourself, right now if you'd like. In and out. Slow, like that first breath across the formless dark. There is no rush here. This story unfolds the way a single snowflake settles onto a sleeve, quietly, and only when it's ready. On the first day, though there were no days yet, not really, no way to count them, a single thought moved through the endless dark. Let there be light. And so, gently, without any sound at all, light began to bloom. Not a flash, not a burst. Imagine, instead, the way morning light seeps under a curtain, so slowly you almost don't notice it happening. One moment the room is dark, and many long, slow minutes later, it is soft and gray and gentle, and you realize the light simply arrived. That is how light came into the world. Quietly, patiently, filling the endless dark the way warmth fills a cold room, inch by inch, without hurry. And when the light had spread as far as it needed to spread, it paused there, glowing softly against the dark that remained beyond it. And the story says this was good, simply good. Nothing more needed to be said about it. Then the light was given a name, day, and the dark that remained was given a name too, night. And so, for the first time, there was a difference between one thing and another, a boundary, a rhythm, something and its opposite, resting side by side. And that was the evening, and that was the morning, the first day. You don't have to hold on to any of this. Let it pass through you like warm water. Light, dark, evening, morning. Soft words, softly said. On the second day, the deep waters, that endless, folding, formless dark we spoke of, began to separate. Imagine a hand, slow and gentle, easing itself between two layers of heavy fabric, lifting the top layer up and away, careful not to tear it, careful not to rush. That is how the sky was made. The waters above lifted gently upward, spreading out, thinning, becoming vast and pale and endless. And the waters below settled quietly beneath, deep and dark and still. And in between those two great bodies of water, the ones above and the ones below, a space opened. A space to breathe in. A space with room enough for wind to someday wander through it, for birds to someday glide across it, for clouds to someday drift, slow and unhurried, like thoughts before sleep. This space was called sky. And if you had been there, although again, there was no one there yet to see it, you might have looked up into that new wide space and felt something settle in your chest, a kind of calm. The kind of calm that comes from looking up at open air and realizing there is nothing pressing down on you, nothing at all, just space and quiet and room to rest. And that was the evening, and that was the morning, the second day. On the third day, the waters below the sky began to gather. Slowly, the way a spilled cup of tea gathers itself back toward the center of a saucer, the waters pulled inward, pooling together, leaving behind long stretches of bare, damp ground. This gathered water was called sea, and the dry ground that emerged, patient and quiet beneath the new sky, was called land. And the land rested there for a while, simply being land, bare, brown, silent. Then, gently, the land began to change. Small green shoots pressed themselves up through the soil, the way your own body sometimes eases itself deeper into a warm blanket, without effort, without thought, just a slow settling into comfort. Grass unrolled itself across the fields like soft carpets. Trees rose, unhurried, stretching their branches out and up, their leaves unfurling one by one in the still air. Seeds formed inside flowers and fruits, tiny and patient, holding within them the promise of forests that hadn't grown yet, gardens that hadn't bloomed yet, orchards that wouldn't exist for 1,000 slow seasons to come. If you listen closely, and you don't have to, you can just let your mind rest instead, you might imagine the quiet sound of that first grass growing. Not a rustle, not yet, because there was no wind to rustle it. Just a soft, slow lengthening, the way your own limbs feel heavier and looser the longer you lie still. And that was the evening, and that was the morning, the third day. On the fourth day, lights appeared in the vast sky. One great light, warm and golden, was set to rule over the day, the sun, and a smaller, cooler, silver light was set to watch gently over the night, the moon. And scattered all around them, tiny and distant and quiet, thousands upon thousands of stars blinked softly into being, like scattered grains of light settled across a dark blanket. These lights were given a gentle purpose. They would mark the passing of days into nights and nights into days. They would mark the slow turning of seasons, spring easing into summer, summer softening into autumn, autumn cooling into winter, and winter, in its own time, warming again into spring. Imagine now, lying beneath that very first night sky, The moon hangs low and pale above you. The stars are scattered so thickly you could almost mistake them for a fine mist of light. There is no city glow to dim them, no sound but your own slow breathing. Just an old new sky, endless and quiet, watching over an old new world. The sun would rise gently each morning, warming the new grass, drawing color into the young leaves. And each evening, it would lower itself slowly beyond the edge of the land, and the moon would rise in its place, calm and silver, standing watch while the world rested. And that was the evening, and that was the morning, the fourth day. On the fifth day, the waters that had gathered into seas began softly to fill with life. Fish drifted into being beneath the surface, their shapes forming slowly, the way a shape forms in fog before you're quite sure what you're looking at. Some were small and silver, darting in loose little clusters. Some were large and slow, gliding through the deep water, the way a heavy curtain sways in a barely felt breeze. And in the sky, that wide, calm space that had opened on the second day, birds began to appear. Soft feathers unfurled, wings stretched wide, then folded, then stretched again, testing the air. And one by one, they lifted from the branches of the young trees and drifted upward into that pale, open sky. Imagine the very first bird song, drifting quietly across a world that had never heard birdsong before. Not loud, not urgent, just a few soft notes, floating out over the still water, answered a moment later by another bird, somewhere further off, its call fading gently into the wide and patient air. The creatures of the sea sank slowly toward the cool, dim deep, and the creatures of the sky rose slowly toward the wide, pale height. And between them, the young world simply rested, filling itself gently with quiet movement and soft sound. And that was the evening, and that was the morning, the fifth day. On the sixth day, the land itself began to stir with life. Slowly, animals eased into being across the young earth. Great, heavy creatures rose up from the soil, the way mist rises from a warm field at dawn, unhurried, weighty, calm. Smaller creatures followed, quick and light-footed, slipping between the tall grasses. Some moved on four legs, some low along the ground, some climbing gently into the lower branches of the trees. They wandered, slow and unafraid, across meadows that had never been walked before. They drank from streams that had never been drunk from before. They lay down, when they were tired, in grass that had never been lain in before. And the grass simply bent softly beneath them, as if it had been waiting all along for something gentle to rest upon it. And then, at the quiet end of this sixth day, the story tells us that one more kind of creature was formed, a keeper for this new, still world. Someone to walk gently among the grass and trees, to watch the birds drift across the pale sky, to feel the cool seawater lap against bare feet on a quiet shore. On the sixth day, the land itself began to stir with life. Slowly, animals eased into being across the young earth. Great, heavy creatures rose up from the soil, the way mist rises from a warm field at dawn, unhurried, weighty, calm. Smaller creatures followed, quick and light-footed, slipping between the tall grasses. Some moved on four legs, some low along the ground, some climbing gently into the lower branches of the trees. They wandered, slow and unafraid, across meadows that had never been walked before. They drank from streams that had never been drunk from before. They lay down, when they were tired, in grass that had never been lain in before. And the grass simply bent softly beneath them, as if it had been waiting all along for something gentle to rest upon it. And then, at the quiet end of this sixth day, the story tells us that one more kind of creature was formed, a keeper for this new, still world. Someone to walk gently among the grass and trees, to watch the birds drift across the pale sky, to feel the cool seawater lap against bare feet on a quiet shore. And when this was done, the story says, the whole world was looked over, slowly, gently, from the wide sky to the deep sea to the green land. And it was good. All of it. Simply, quietly good. And that was the evening. And that was the morning. The 6th day. On the 7th day, after everything had been so gently, slowly made, the light, the sky, the land, the sea, the sun and moon and stars, the fish and birds, and every creature of the field, the world simply rested. No new thing was made that day. No shaping, no forming, no gathering. Just stillness. A wide, warm, settled stillness, spreading out over everything that had been made in the 6 slow days before. Imagine that stillness now, settling over you the way it once settled over that very first world. The grass lies still in the fields. The sea rests quiet and unbroken beneath the moon. The animals sleep curled in soft hollows of earth, their breathing slow and even. The birds are folded into their branches, heads tucked beneath wing. And above it all, the stars simply watch, patient and unmoving, over a world that has, at last, nothing left to do but rest. This was the 7th day, the day the story tells us was set apart, gently, as a day of rest, a day with nothing asked of it, a day simply to be still. You can borrow a little of that stillness now, if you like. There is nothing you need to make happen, nothing you need to finish, nothing waiting on the other side of this moment that needs your attention. Just this quiet, unhurried rest, the same rest that settled over the very first world so long ago, at the end of the very first week that ever was. And so the old story ends. The light, the sky, the land and sea, the sun and moon and stars, the creatures of water and air and earth, and finally, rest. People have told this story for thousands of years, in 1,000 different quiet rooms, beside fires, beneath candlelight, in old stone halls where the wind pressed softly against the shutters. And every time it was told, listeners would grow a little stiller, a little heavier in their chairs, a little further from the busy day they'd left behind, and a little closer to sleep. You can let yourself do the same now. There is nothing left to follow in this story. No thread to hold on to. Just light, softening into dark. Just water, settling into stillness. Just the old, slow rhythm of evening, and morning, and evening, and morning. Fading now, gently, into rest. Let your breathing slow. Let your shoulders soften into the bed beneath you. Let the wide, quiet sky of that very first world stretch out gently above you, full of soft, scattered stars, watching over you the way it once watched over the very first, still, resting world. Good night.